Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Those are the words of Arthur C. Clarke. It's a good place to begin because it sits central in the Venn diagram between the themes and concerns of science and those of science fiction. At the cutting edge of science, the wondrous and the enormous, the infinitely small and the infinitely large speak of realms beyond our wildest imaginings. Dimensions other than our own, particles which are entangled across great distances, the tantalizing glimpse of what may be something of an extraterrestrial intelligence, our future on the planet and in the vast reaches of interstellar space. These are the places which intersect and need our minds and hearts to make connections as science grasps at the edges of the possible. I'm Mark Sanfilippo, and this is the Frontiers of Science Fiction. First, a word on the framework and structure of the exhibition and its basis, the Frontiers of Science comic strips. The original Frontiers of Science strips ran from 1961 to 1982, and they were significant as a means of communicating and popularising science. It was Australian and developed here at the University of Sydney, and was produced and distributed by Press Features Service. This series was co-written and produced by Professor Stuart Butler from the School of Physics, and journalist and filmmaker Bob Raymond. The early artwork was produced by Andrea Bresciani. Later on, it was continued by David Emerson. In total, 939 weekly episodes were produced, each one having a strip per day, totaling 5 strips altogether. They were all on a particular topic, and they continued for the week on that theme. The strips were initially published in the Sydney Morning Herald, and then in every capital except for Adelaide. Ultimately, they went to the USA and Canada, and were also produced and translated internationally after that. The massive scale of the vast reaches of space and the implications of it weigh into 2 prominent science fiction themes: contact with other intelligences and space travel. This strip, Frontiers of Science 26, entitled The Giant Leap, invokes Professor Bracewell and Professor Gold, who believed that 20 to 30 planets within 10 light years of us would be able to be communicated with, and that we might jump ahead in technology if we did so. And this was probably something that would be imminent. Now, I draw your attention to the Kardashev Scale. Kardashev Scale was made by this man, Nikolai Kardashev, who was a Soviet astronomer. And in 1964, he proposed this scale as a method of measuring a civilization's level of technological advancement through observing the energy that is put out by observing it astronomically. The observable heat emissions from a celestial body will tell you what level of advancement a civilization is at. And that, at least, is the idea. So he designated categories for this. A type 1 civilization was a planetary civilization, one that exploited the energy from that planet and that planet alone. Carl Sagan, in the 70s, said that Earth was currently at a 0.7 of a type 1 civilization, so not quite there yet. A type 2 civilization, a stellar civilization, can use and control the energy from its parent star, the star that gives it power and life within a solar system. Type 3 civilization, also called a galactic civilization, would be able to control energy at the scale of an entire galaxy. The Frontiers of Science also has a reference to this in a very graphic form. It's a very elegant graphic representation of one of the theoretical ideas of a Type 2 civilization. This is The Life Around Us from 1963. This depicts a Type 2 civilization which is able to exploit its natural resources and create a sphere around its own star or sun in order to collect solar energy directly. The sphere is often called a Dyson Sphere, and what it does is it orbits a sun or star at a certain distance, allowing all of the energy from that star to be directed towards the parent planet or wherever the civilization needs it to go. You have a look at another of the days from this pool, you'll see how nicely represented this is. And I want to say at this point that the work of Emerson and Bresciani in depicting these complicated scientific ideas is actually a very beautiful thought out process and a wonderful collaboration between scientific thinking and artistic expression. At the very joint of science and the fine arts, you see this wondrous depiction which allows for instant ideation and instant recognition of a concept. And in this one you see the spinning shards like another sphere around the sphere of the sun. Now to the matter of contacting. In Frontiers of Science 543, Earth Calling the Universe, we see the prospect of communication with extraterrestrial intelligences, and it's given the appraisal that Frontiers of Science does so well using the current science of the time. A wealth of science fiction books within our collections deal also with this, so I've selected a couple to illustrate some contrasting positions on what it means to communicate with other intelligences in a speculative sense. Deciphering communications between us and an alien intelligence has long been something important to the history of science fiction, which goes back as far as From Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne. Verne's idea was that there are ways to communicate with an intelligent life form that we already know, which is one that still has some kind of currency today, of course. And here is a quote from this book written in 1867. "Every intelligent being," said the geometrician, "must understand the scientific meaning of that figure. The Selenites, do they exist, will respond by a similar figure, and a communication being thus established will be easy to form an alphabet which will enable us to converse with the inhabitants of the moon." So spoke the German geometrician, but his project was never put into practice. And up to the present day, there is no bond in existence between the Earth and her satellite. It is reserved for the practical genius of the Americans to establish communication with the sidereal world. Jules Verne, From Earth to the Moon, 1867. This is a rather hopeful notion that geometry will form the basis of a language which everyone will understand. And it makes sense because, of course, mathematics and physics at the base are what we are pinning our money on in order to decipher the universe and therefore be decipherable by others. All ears on space. Current state sees NASA return to looking at alien intelligences. After having abandoned funding for the SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, back in 1993, in 2018 they announced an emphasis on searching for technosignatures. SETI pioneer Jill Tarter has proposed that the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence be renamed the Search for Technosignatures. Although the question of whether we're alone in the universe is one of humanity's oldest, are there others who share the universe with us, or are we totally alone? Most searches for advanced alien life have sought radio waves of artificial origin. More recently, astronomers have suggested looking for visible laser pulses. This is called optical SETI. And there have been some other exotic ideas, like the possibility that an advanced civilization might use neutron star mergers to signal across the cosmos. But do we really know what to look for from an alien civilization that might be millions of years ahead of us? Science fiction of the time of that strip points in many directions over alien contact. However, some of our collections see the prospects as different. The brothers Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, in their 1971 book Roadside Picnic, set their drama within a zone cordoned off by the government after an alleged alien visit. This is a realm of strange and desolate upheaval into which, in the 16 years since the occurrence, renegade stalkers or treasure hunters come, and they risk life and limb in order to retrieve the powerful yet unfathomable objects which are left in the wake of this so-called visitation. The titular analogy of the picnic likens the visitation to the remains of a picnic. If we were animals standing in the clearing or finding the debris of human campsite after humans had come and gone, what would we make of it? Could we even comprehend what it meant? This is the central tenet of the book. And a quote from the book: "A picnic. Imagine a forest, a country road, a meadow. A car pulls off the road into the meadow and unloads young men, bottles, picnic baskets, girls, transistor radios, cameras. A fire is lit, tents are pitched, music is played, and in the morning they leave. The animals and birds and insects were watching the whole night in horror, and they crawl out of their shelters. And what do they see? An oil spill, a gasoline puddle, old spark plugs, oil filters strewn about, scattered rags, burnt out bulbs. Someone has dropped a monkey wrench. The wheels have tracked mud from some godforsaken swamp. And of course, there are remains of a campfire, apple cores, candy wrappers, tins, bottles, someone's handkerchief, someone's penknife, old ragged newspapers, coins, wilted flowers from another meadow." "I get it," said Noonan. "A roadside picnic." "Exactly. A picnic by the side of some space road. And you ask me whether they'll come back?" "Let me have a smoke," said Noonan. "Damn your pseudoscience. Somehow this isn't at all how I envisaged it." "That's your right," observed Valentine. "What, you mean they never even noticed us?" "Why? Or at least they paid no attention." "I wouldn't get too disappointed if I were you," said Valentine. You can see there that the whole notion of intelligence meeting our intelligence might well be an issue of an impossibility of comprehension. I want to jump over to something slightly different to do with travel, interstellar travel, relativistic space travel. In Paul Anderson's 1970 book, Tau Zero, 50 space travelers are compelled to continue accelerating to near light speeds after miscalculating planetfall. Ultimately, relativity, as per Einstein's model, means that they can actually witness the end of the universe as they accelerate towards light speed. and time slows down for them and speeds up for all things around them. They see the end of the universe and its rebirth in a new cosmos, and they make planetfall there. Similarly, in Joe Haldeman's book, The Forever War, there's a decidedly different take on relativistic space travel. In his novel, the effect of time dilation between the Earth and the travellers going off to wage war against an implacable and virtually unintelligible enemy means that returned soldiers are perpetually at odds with the Earth they return to after decades of Earth time and only months in their own. Haldeman's own experience as a returned Vietnam veteran colour the tale of Earth, read America, that has upturned the values that drafted him in the first place. Yet another treatment of the theme of relativistic travel comes from Ursula Le Guin in her book Racannon's World. Another wonderful cover in which there's a crossover into the style of fantasy art. In this work, the folkloric theme of abduction and return by the fairy folk, unaged after many years, intersects with the idea of relativistic space travel within a vessel going across vast reaches of interstellar space. It makes out that the aliens are actually the fairies, which is an interesting version of the whole idea. Black holes. Black holes are a very interesting concept because until recent times they weren't really proven to exist, although the mathematics and physics said that they did. In the Frontiers of Science, number 640, black holes are yet to be proven, as you can see from this, but the science is sound. Conjecture about what happens at the event horizon, at the edge of the spinning black hole, and also the causes of a black hole, a collapsing star, twice the size of our sun, all prove very accurate. And you can see all about black holes here, and here the event horizon is actually drawn quite beautifully so that you get a sense of what it might mean. Again, a very difficult conceptual idea, but drawn well. And so what does this mean for the reality of black holes? The EHT, the Event Horizon Telescope, a planetary scale array of 8 ground-based radio telescopes forged through international collaboration, was designed to capture images of black holes in it. And so, in a coordinated press conference across the globe, EHT researchers revealed that they succeeded unveiling the first direct visual evidence of the supermassive black hole in the centre of the Messier 87 and its shadow. The shadow of a black hole can be seen here in this picture. It's the closest we come to an image of a black hole itself, although it is compiled of several different rendered images. It's a completely dark object from which light cannot escape. The black hole's boundary, the event horizon, from which the EHT takes its name, is around 2.5 times smaller than the shadow it casts and measures just under 40 billion kilometres across. Whilst this may sound large, this ring is only about 40 micro arc seconds across, equivalent to measuring the length of a credit card on the surface of the moon. Black hole Starship is a theoretical idea for enabling interstellar travel. It propels a starship by using a black hole as the energy source, and the concept was first discussed in science fiction in the book Imperial Earth by Arthur C. Clarke and in the work of Charles Sheffield. In these, the energy extracted from a Kerr-Newman black hole is described as powering the rocket engines in the story Killing Vector of 1978 by Sheffield. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the kind of science which has influenced our everyday lives in a lot more palpable and direct way, which is represented in the Frontiers of Science way back in 1965. Life in the Computer Age is a Frontiers of Science comic strip from 1965. More of the innovations that actually came true occur in this than in probably any other of the Frontiers of Science strips. This image shows a library and the idea of access to information. It might be a quaint-looking television set which seems to have all of this information scrolling across, and the man with the pipe is looking at it in the comfort of his own living room using a wired remote control. But it speaks to the idea of libraries and their central position in information dissemination. The fullness of time has proven that libraries have in some ways become a little marginalised to the internet, and they're no longer the only receptacles of information. The internet is a far more atomised version of this, but also the idea that a centralised or governmental power might well hold sway in the same way as it did in the 60s is an interesting variation on the theme that really occurs today. Google, Amazon, Apple and Facebook currently face congressional hearings on their monopolies, and this is something to look at when you look at this particular strip. Here's another strip from the same pool in which we see the central problem of computer communication. Computers' ability to analyse and obey voice commands is close to achievement, and this will open immense new possibilities. And in this last panel you can see a man speaking into a wired microphone in order to have interface with a computer. There are many other things within this strip which relate to the changes that are predicted when computers gain great primacy within general usage. The extension of voice command, the idea of extra leisure hours, phone calls or communication to computers, automating product supply chain end to end, radar speed traps and centralised government revenue, of course, instantaneous translation, and the paperless office are all invoked in this one strip. Among the other things which this Frontiers of Science predicts, the one I want to focus on here is the extension of this to voice command in terms of something like Siri or Alexa. The Demon Seed is a book by Dean R. Koontz, and this book from the early 70s talks about the notion of a computer which facilitates the homeowner's every whim and interest and every desire. Apple's proprietary voice recognition and response software, native to billions of devices worldwide in homes, offices and pockets, has a dark 70s precedent in this book. The heroine Susan Harris lived in self-imposed seclusion in a mansion featuring numerous automated systems controlled by a state-of-the-art computer, and every comfort was provided. And in this often unsafe world of ours, her security was absolute. But now her security system had been breached. Her sanctuary from the outside world was violated by an insidious artificial intelligence which has taken control of her house. In the privacy of her own home and against her will, Susan will experience an inconceivable act of terror. She will become the object of the ultimate computer-consuming obsession to control her. There's more to it, but it would be a spoiler. Interestingly as well, asking the question that Philip K. Dick asks in his book, which was turned into a movie, Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Do they? And 2010, Odyssey 2, by Arthur C. Clarke, another in our collection, in which Sal, the sentient computer, asks, "Will I dream?" It runs to the core of the idea of where science may lead us to something that is beyond human. If you come and see the exhibition, you will see a lot of these things brought together within that framework. Thank you.